Hey book girlies, I'm Sarah.
Hey gamer guys, it's Ian.
And you're listening to a pod of sass and sarcasm. It feels like it's been a while since we've done this.
It has.
We've got some exciting news, which is that we've got, and I don't know if anyone can hear the difference. I hope you can. We've got some new microphones so that I don't have to sit literally all the way across the room with my shouting. We can just turn the gain way down on me.
Yep. That's the plan anyway.
Yeah. We're testing it out, seeing if it works. Hopefully it doesn't sound terrible. Yeah, so it's been a while since we've done this. Because somebody's been off being an invader in the woods.
Yeah, I've been a woods invader for a while. Haven't necessarily been playing any games.
Mm-hmm.
But my friends and I have been trying to get a game emulation to work.
What does that mean?
We were looking for a game we can play with each other. And one game that came up was called, I think it's Super Mario Smash Brothers Brawl.
Okay.
Or people just call it Brawl. It's an old Wii U game, or Nintendo Wii game. And Nintendo doesn't put their stuff on the computer.
Right.
So we have to download a bunch of programs to get it to work and communicate with each other. And it's not technically legal.
Wow, you're just advertising your illegality here.
Yeah.
All your crimes.
We downloaded a bunch of, it's called Project Plus.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes the Brawl game and modifies it a bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what people use to do tournaments for 1 versus 1. So I got it to work on my computer. I helped someone else install it on their computer, but we were having problems with the netcode. So we weren't I think it was on my end. I wasn't able to connect it to anyone else. People could connect to me though. So I set up a controller and did some practice rounds just to see if it worked. The game launched and started appropriately, but another person, he could not get it to work at all.
Oh no.
It just kept launching the wrong version. I was like, what is happening?
I guess that's what you get with illegal components.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing we were downloading from, the guy I was helping to install it, he was like, whoa, look at all these games. Does it have it? Does it have it? And I was like, if it exists, yeah.
We also just acquired some board games that I'm very confused about, very interested in.
Yeah, we got Gloomhaven, which is like, what, 15 pounds?
It
20?
looks like it's a gigantic box, and that's not even as big as the Isofarian Guard.
Yeah, the Isofarian Guard. That's like 30 to 40 pounds. I'm not even kidding.
And that's a board game. I am so intrigued. I can't wait to start playing those.
Yeah, I don't even know what's in them.
I've never played them. We just recently acquired them because somebody wanted to give them to us as a gift. Which
I think they just want us to have them. I don't even know.
That's it. Yeah. Well, we have them.
I have them now.
So not much going on in the gaming world yet.
Yeah, because I was in the woods for what?
10 days.
10 days. And then...
And I was all alone.
Yeah.
And very upset about it.
And then I came back and I was like, oh, I didn't have internet access, so there's a lot to read right now. So I was just reading a bunch of stuff. Because other than that, when I came, getting that Project Plus going, I just updated everything on the computer. I was like, what is going on? I'm going to just see who's online, catch up on the gossip, and then just do updates on everything.
Yeah. So, this is also serving as proof that you did not die I did not keep you in the murder hole, because that is something that Bree and I had to make a lot of jokes about. We were like, we promise Ian's totally alive.
Yeah. I decided I need to investigate the murder hole.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I want to know how animals are getting in the house.
I don't think it's through the murder hole.
It might be.
No, I think it's the roof.
I don't see how on the roof.
That's because you don't go up on the roof, because the roof is scary.
I can see. It's just steep.
Yeah, we do have some animal critters in our wall, and it's really annoying.
I heard a squirrel earlier just munching away at something. I was like, hopefully it's not a cord and we get a fire.
Hopefully it is?
It's not.
Oh,
Hopefully it's not a cord.
I thought you said hopefully it's another cord and we get a fire. I'm like, I would not like to live through any other fires. Thank you.
No, thanks.
That'd be real annoying. Minimum.
Yeah.
So can I tell you about this book?
Yes, please tell me.
Okay, so we are reading The Nightingale by Kristin Hannah, and you weren't privy to the first, 4 chapters of it, so you're gonna have to deal with the recap. Because that's all the information you're going to get. So this is a book about World War II. So again, I'm killing it with the light and fluffy stuff here.
Yeah.
But I blame you for this because you did pick it out of the to-be-read jar. It mainly focuses on the sisters Vienne and Isabel during the beginnings of World War II. Vienne is the older sister. She's married with a young daughter named Sophie. Her husband Antoine is conscripted to the front lines. This is back in 1939. And he didn't have a choice in the matter. Isabel is the younger sister, and she's been expelled from her finishing school.
Ooh. Oh, I did it already. I said ooh.
So in June of 1940, she's expelled from her finishing school and sent to live in Paris with her dad, who seems relatively uninterested in taking care of her. Isabel dreams of being a hero like Edith Cavell. Then suddenly, right after she was sent to live with her dad in Paris, the Germans invade Paris, and so Isabel and her father run home and arrive just as the German air raid begins. And that was where I left off, was just there was an air raid happening.
Okay.
From far away, a droning sound. As it grew louder, the window rattled, sounding like ice in a glass. Isabel heard a high whistling sound only seconds before she saw the black flotilla in the sky, like the birds flying in formation. Aeroplanes. Germans, her father whispered. German aeroplanes flying over Paris. The whistling sound increased, became like a woman's scream, and then somewhere a bomb exploded. In a flash of eerie bright light, and something caught fire. The air raid siren sounded. Her father wrenched the curtains shut and led her out of the apartment, down the stairs. Their neighbors were all doing the same thing, carrying coats and babies and pets down the stairs to the lobby, and then down the narrow twisting stone stairs that led to the cellar. In the dark, they sat together, crowded in close. The air stank of mildew and body odor and fear. That was the sharpest scent of all. The bombing went on and on and on, screeching and droning, the cellar walls vibrating all around them. Dust fell from the ceiling. A baby started crying and couldn't be soothed. So it's going to be heavy, I think, this entire book.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It even hit on the Germans' scare tactic of their planes were purposefully meant to sound like screaming.
Were they really? I didn't know that.
Normally, a plane doesn't sound like that, but theirs were intentionally made to make noise.
Oh, that's really scary.
It's that or the bombs were made to make noise. It's to inflict terror.
Mm-hmm. That's so upsetting because this was already a terrifying time, and just war, and the fact that they caught France by surprise and took over Paris without really any indication that that's what was going to be happening. And so everybody was just shocked that this happened. That is scary enough. You don't need to also have like super metal and terrifying sounding machinery. Like that's just really, I don't know.
Well, to be fair, they just went around.
Around what?
I forget what the line is called, but there was like a defensive line. They were like, why would I go through that if I can just go quickly around you?
Yeah, that's where Vianne's husband was sent, was that line. I don't know what that line was called either. I'm sorry. But
anyway, I'll try not to spiel too much about my history lore.
Lore?
Yeah, it's lore. It's real world lore.
You can spew as much as you want about it, as long as you're not spreading false information. So eventually the air raid ends and they return to their apartment. Her father seems to act like nothing happened. He's just like, all right, go to bed.
Battle, go to bed.
He's like, so he tells Isabel to go to bed, and she looks out the window and sees that at least the Eiffel Tower is still standing, but that's a small relief to her, if it's even any kind of relief. And the next morning, her father sends her to live with her sister Vienne. For many reasons, Isabel doesn't want to go to live with Vienne. She used to live with Vienne in Caravo, but the two of them really didn't have a very good relationship. Their dad kind of abandoned them after World War I because he served in World War I and came back a completely different person, and then abandoned them. And
all right,
yeah, so she's not thrilled to be living with her dad, but she's also like, I don't want to live with Vienne because Vienne also abandoned me, and Vienne went through several miscarriages, and so
Oh, okay.
You know, it's...
Some weird dynamics happening.
Yes. So there's a lot going on. So she's like, I don't want to go live with Bien because she doesn't want me any more than I want to be there with her. And she just assumes that her dad is trying to get rid of her again. And in reality, from the way that I see it, it looks like he's trying to protect her. Like he's like, you can't be, it's not safe here. So you have to go live with Bien, where so far it is safe. On top of it, Isabel and Bien, honestly, are thinking about how the government seems to have lied to them, and they were all taken by surprise with this invasion. And her dad even thinks that there's something going on with the government of France being somewhat behind this in a way. And so he didn't want to risk her life, but Isabel still felt very betrayed by this, and she wanted to stay and fight to be a nurse and also a hero. She's 19 years old, so she feels like she can be a war hero. But he still basically shoved her into a car and watched her drive away. And along the drive, Isabel noticed the countless refugees walking to Tours, which is the nearest city, I think. I don't know French geography very well, so I don't know where Tours is.
It's somewhere.
It's on the way to Caravo, I know that.
It's in France.
It's in France. It sounds like it's south of Paris, but I don't know any much more than that. Chaos, dust, crowds. The street was a living, breathing dragon of humanity, inching forward, wheezing dirt, honking horns, people yelling for help, babies crying, and the smell of sweat heavy in the air. Automobiles clogged the area, each burdened beneath boxes and bags. People had taken whatever they could find: carts, bicycles, and even children's wagons. Those who couldn't find or afford petrol or an automobile or a bicycle walked. Hundreds, thousands of women and children held hands, shuffled forward, carrying as much as they could hold. Suitcases, picnic baskets, pets. Already the very old and very young were falling behind. Hours passed. The automobile made its slow, agonizing way south. Isabel was grateful for the dust. It coated the windows and obscured the terrible, depressing scene. People everywhere, in front of them, behind them, beside them. So thick was the crowd that the automobile could only inch forward in fits and starts. No one knew exactly what was happening behind them, or where safety lay ahead. The car lurched forward and stopped hard. Isabel hit the seat in front of her. The children immediately started to cry for their mother. Merde, Monsieur Herbert muttered. That's it. We're out of petrol. We'll find a place to stay. Perhaps I can convince my brother to come fetch us. Humbert opened his automobile door, being careful not to hit anyone ambling past, and stepped out onto the dusty dirt road. Isabel sat upright. Surely she'd missed something. Were they going to simply abandon the automobile? You think we can walk to Tours? Patricia turned around in her seat. She looked as drained and hot as Isabel felt. Perhaps one of your books can help you. Certainly they were a smarter choice than bread or water. Come, girls. Isabel reached down for her suitcase at her feet. It was wedged in tightly and required some effort to extricate. With a growl of determination, she finally yanked it free and opened the car door and stepped out. She was immediately surrounded by people, pushed and shoved and cursed at. So I found this passage really interesting because Isabel is 19 or 18. I thought they introduced her as 19, but her sister, when she finally catches up with her sister, keeps calling her 18. So I don't know if she's 18 or 19, but she's young. And she's pretty, in my opinion, she seems to be pretty well aware of what's going on. She understands that they're in war. She understands all of this kind of stuff. She understands that Paris was just invaded by the Germans and that, you know, she, as well as many other people, are refugees. And yet she chose to pack an entire suitcase of books, like she's going on vacation and gonna have all this reading time and not food and, you know, supplies and stuff. And she doesn't understand that, like, yeah, we're abandoning the car doesn't matter right now, we're trying to get to safety, kind of thing. So it's just really interesting because I think it really like shows her age and her naivete about all of this. And so this family that agreed to drive her, the Humberts, I think have every right to be as snarky as they are about it, with her being like, perhaps your books will help you and whatever, because they're like, what the hell are you doing right now? I get where they're coming from, but I also get where she is like, you guys don't have to be an asshole about it. So then immediately the Humberts, who had been driving her to Tours, abandoned her. She gets abandoned immediately.
All right.
They were like, all right, we're leaving the car, we're leaving the automobile, we're leaving you, Isabel, figure it out. Which was already part of the plan. They agreed to take her as far as Tours, and her sister lives in Caravo, so she was gonna have to figure out how to get from Tours to Caravo on her own, but like she's not even in Tours yet, and so she's like, well, shit. And so she's got to bring her huge heavy suitcase of books. Well, she doesn't have to, but she chooses to. And so as soon as she like gets out of the car, she looks around. Humbert family is gone. She's like, where the fuck did they go? I can't even find them. So she recognized that all of these refugees are heading to Tours, and she figured well, if everybody's going there, there's not going to be any place left for me there. There's not going to be a place to sleep. There's not going to be anything to eat. So maybe I should go not with the crowd.
Yeah, I can't believe her dad abandoned her to go on this trip alone at 18.
He also abandoned her when she was much younger, so
She was actually probably safer in Paris.
I don't know what his reasoning is. I don't know. We're kind of getting it from her point of view, so
or just gone with her. Like, I don't
get why he had to stay there, but she decided that she's going to try to find her own route to Caraveau. She peeled away from the crowd, headed...
Are you speaking French now?
No.
Why
Why are you such an asshole?
It's the French. I'm just joking. Or am I? Nobody knows. Do you know?
I know.
So she's going to go camping in the French countryside.
She peeled away from the crowd, headed toward the collection of moonlit gray stone buildings in the distance, and picked her way carefully through the valley. On the far side of the field, she found a trail that ran south along the stone wall. Turning onto it, she found herself alone. She paused, letting the feel of that settle through her, calm her. Then she began walking again. After a mile or so, the trail led her to a copse of spindly trees. She was deep in the woods when she smelled smoke and roasting meat. Hunger stripped her resolve and made her careless. She saw the orange glow of the fire and moved toward it. At the last minute, she realized her danger and stopped. A twig snapped beneath her foot. "You may as well come over," said a male voice. "You move like an elephant through the woods." Isabel froze. She knew she'd been stupid. There could be danger here for a girl alone. She'd been paying attention to nothing except the gnawing in her empty stomach and the aroma of roasting meat. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." That was certainly true. "You can trust me."
No, anyone that says you can trust me is not to be trusted.
It's true. She stared into the darkness, trying to make him out. Couldn't. "You would say that if the opposite were true, too." A laugh. "Oui. And now, come here. I have a rabbit on the fire." She followed the glow of the firelight over a rocky gully and uphill. The tree trunks around her looked silver in the moonlight. She moved lightly, ready to run at an instant, which I'm like, how are you ready to run with your huge bag of books with you that I know that you still have?
Is it full of books or is it just a couple?
It was implied that it was a lot of books.
But for this person, a lot may be... the person making fun of her, a lot may be two.
Well, her dad owns a bookstore in Paris.
Oh.
So she was planning on helping him run that bookstore. So I'm like, yeah, she probably has like 5 at least.
All right.
At the last tree between her and the fire, she stopped. A young man sat by the fire, leaning back against a rough trunk, one leg thrust forward, one bent at the knee. He was probably only a few years older than Isabel. "I hope you're a gentleman," she said, from her place in the darkness. He laughed. "I'm sure you do." She sat across from him in the grass. He smiled. "Gaetan Dubois. My friends call me Gate." "Isabel Rossignol." "Ah, a Nightingale." She shrugged. It was hardly a new observation. Her surname meant Nightingale. Maman had called Vienne and Isabel her Nightingales as she kissed them goodnight. It was one of Isabel's few memories of her. So this is clearly an important moment because the book is called The Nightingale. So both Isabel and Vienne are nightingales, literally.
Okay. I have a feeling I know where this story is going to go.
Okay. What's your feeling?
I think they're going to probably either meet up with a Green Beret or they're just going to become a resistance cell and start bombing railroads.
All of that from the fact that she revealed her name is Nightingale, or?
Just because of the fact that it's a French individual and they're just in the woods and the name Nightingale means something like that. So why have a character with the name Nightingale if they're not going to do stuff at night? Espionage at night, I guess.
So one thing that I picked out, though, is, okay, so it's important to know that her last name means Nightingale, but the book title is called The Nightingale, as if there's only one, and she does have a sister named Vienne, who's also Vienne Rossignol. Although I suppose Vienne's married now, so maybe she doesn't have it anymore.
Well, she's not important to the story.
She's very important to the story.
Do they actually meet up?
Yes.
Oh.
And we've met Vienne before. She was the first one that we met after the intro of the book. Again, you haven't even listened to the last episode, so you don't even know any of this.
Okay. I'm a little disappointed. I guess they become the Nightingales. That's going to be my guess.
No, my guess is that one of them dies so that there's only one Nightingale.
Oh, that'll be like halfway through the book, and that'll be the catalyst of solidifying their resolve.
Sure. Anyways, Isabel decided.
Anyway, back to what this book is actually about to be. Not your guesses.
I don't know. In the last book, you made some pretty spot on guesses, which really kind of bothered me as I've gone back and edited them. I'm like, how did you know that? Anyways, so Isabel decides to change the subject off of her name. Why are you leaving Paris? A man like you should stay and fight. They opened the prison. Apparently, it's better to have us fight for France than it is to sit behind bars when the Germans storm through.
Ah, wonderful.
You were in prison? Does that scare you? No.
No, you're supposed to go, yeah.
I think you're going to like Gaetan a lot. You were in prison? Does that scare you? No, it's just unexpected. You should be scared, he said, pushing the stringy hair out of his eyes. Anyway, you're safe enough with me. I have other things on my mind. I'm going to check on my mom and my sister, and then find a regiment to join. I'll kill as many of those bastards as I can. Come with me. Isabel knew better than to believe him. You only ask because I'm pretty, and you think that I'll end up if you're...
I'm more French, yes. If we ever have any French listeners, they're like, this guy.
Well, okay, we do have a couple listeners in Canada. I don't know if they speak French, though.
Oh, even worse, French Canadians.
Ian, we don't have enough listeners for you to be making those jokes. We must love everyone before you start, being a dick to everyone. Here's the thing, everyone. Ian's a dick, but he doesn't mean it most of the time.
Or do I mean it, all of it? And people just don't understand.
Way to tank our numbers, Ian.
What am I laughing so hard at my own jokes?
Because you're an asshole.
Yeah. I'll try to stop interrupting.
Okay, sure. Isabel knew better than to believe him. You only ask because I'm pretty, and you think I'll end up in your bed if I stay, she said. He stared across the fire at her. It cracked and hissed as fat dripped onto the flames. He took a long drink of wine and handed the bottle to her. Near the flames, their hands touched, the barest of brushing of skin on skin.
I'm raising my eyebrows.
Near the flames, their hands touched, the barest brushing of skin on skin. I could have you in my bed right now if that's what I wanted.
Ooh, rape implications upon first meeting. Great.
Not willingly, she said, swallowing hard, unable to look away. Willingly, he said, in a way that made her skin prickle and made breathing difficult. But that's not what I meant. Or what I said. I asked you to come with me to fight. Isabel felt something so new she couldn't quite grasp it. She knew she was beautiful. It was a simple fact to her. People said it whenever they met her. She saw how men gazed at her with unabashed desire, remarking on her hair or green eyes or plump lips, how they looked at her breasts. She saw her beauty reflected in women's eyes too, girls at school who didn't want her to stand too near the boys that they liked, and judged her to be arrogant before she'd even spoken a word. Beauty was just another way to discount her, to not see her. She had grown used to getting attention in other ways. And she wasn't completely innocent when it came to passion either. Hadn't the good sisters of St. Francis expelled her for kissing a boy during Mass?
During Mass. Nice.
Not just like for kissing a boy, but specifically kissing a boy during Mass. Okay, calm yourself, Isabel. But this felt different. He saw her beauty. Even in the half-light, she could tell. But he looked past it. Either that, or he was smart enough to see that she wanted to offer more to the world than a pretty face. I could do something that matters, she said quietly. Of course you could. I could teach you to use a gun and a knife. I need to go to Carriveau to make sure that my sister is well. Her husband is at the front. He gazed at her across the fire, his expression intent. We will see your sister in Carriveau, and my mother in Poitiers, and then we'll be off to join the war. He made it sound like such an adventure, no different from running off to join the circus. It was what she'd been looking for all her life. A plan, then, she'd said, unable to hide her smile. I love their banter and their like little back and forth. I think it's really cute, but I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah, let's not forget the fact that you stumbled across a random person in the middle of the woods in the countryside saying, I could sleep with you tonight.
If I wanted to.
If I wanted to. Completely discounting the other person's feelings and everything. I'm like, they're like, that's not what I meant. But I was like, but that's what you said.
No, that's not what he said. He said to come with her. Or come with him. That's all he said. And she's saying, she's the one who brought up going to bed together.
Yeah, and then his response meant.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I just really want to like him.
Well, I'm sure it's a great character, but like,
No, I agree. Well, and also he said that he was in prison.
yeah.
We don't really know what for.
And we probably won't find out until it's important later. Until they meet another person who was in the same prison. It was like, I know what you did.
Yeah, well.
If not, that's just an open story element. So there's lots of this so far this has lots of options. But I'm assuming it's going to be the standard French resistance, because that was a very big part of the whole war.
I really want to like Gaetan, but I don't know how much I can trust him. Isabel seems very trusting of him right off the bat, but we don't know what his crimes were, why he was in prison. We don't really know if he's actually going to see his mom or if that's what he's just saying. We don't know if he has any other kind of ulterior motives for taking Isabel with him. So right now we can only take his word for it, which is a little sketchy.
I don't know. I feel like the nature of the story is going to be a little different, because this character has told her exactly what she wanted to hear. Because you said earlier that when she was in Paris, like going to flee, she was like, I want to fight and be a nurse and all this stuff. So finding opportunity in the woods it's a good story element. I like it a lot. I think this is going to be a pretty good story.
I think so. I'm honestly just here for his sass and for the banter between the two of them, and I'm just ready to get my heart broken by it.
A good old-fashioned rogue. This is yeah.
I'm ready to be torn apart by this. So the next morning, Isabel... Oh, wait, this is actually a quote. Oh, gosh. Sorry.
So the next morning, she woke up. He was gone.
The next morning...
Stole her books.
Anything else?
Left everything else. Just took her books. He's like, fuck you, bitch. Here's my books. He's a kleptomaniac. That was his crime. He just stole a lot of stuff to steal. He doesn't want it. He just wants to steal.
Oh, my God, Ian.
Sorry.
The next morning, Isabel blinked awake to see sunlight...
Sunlight bubbling through the water.
I gotta calm down. Oh my God. The next morning, Isabel blinked awake to see sunlight gilding the leaves rustling overhead. She sat up, re-smoothing the skirt that had hiked up in her sleep, revealing lacy white garters and ruined silk stockings. Don't do that on my account. Isabel glanced to her left and saw Gaetan coming toward her. He didn't scare her. Not at all. Isabel was not like her sister Vienne, who was given to fear and anxiety, but neither was Isabel a fool. If she was going to travel with this man, she had better get a few things straight. So, she said, prison. He stared at her, raised a black eyebrow as if to say, scared yet? A girl like you wouldn't know anything about it. I could tell you it was a Jean Valjean sort of stay, and you would think it was romantic. What was your crime? I took things that didn't belong to me.
Yes! A rogue!
A thief. This is going to be so hard to get through now because it's not a funny book, but you making your predictions and then getting excited about being correct is pretty funny, I'm not going to lie. I took things that didn't belong to me. Is that an answer enough? And you got caught, obviously. That isn't exactly comforting, Gaetan. Were you careless? Gate, he said, moving toward her. I haven't decided if we're friends yet. He touched her hair, let a few strands coil around his dirty finger. We're friends. Bank on it. Now let's go. You have a reaction. I can see it all over your face.
Yeah.
You don't like him touching her hair?
Not yet. Jeez, you guys met last night. Maybe on the third day of travel. I don't know. Maybe she needs to fall and trip and he catches her.
Okay.
Like, come on. Where's the romance? Right now it's just creepiness.
So they start to walk. There's many refugees on a similar path to them, the ones that also decided not to go directly through Tours. And as they're walking late in the afternoon, by this point, they come upon a regiment of French soldiers walking in the same direction as them. So that means that they're going away from Paris, away from where you'd assumed they'd be stationed, you know, in order to reclaim Paris because it's been overrun by Germans. Gaetan and Isabel stop to tell them that they're going the wrong way and ask, who is fighting for France? And the soldiers simply reply, no one.
Ooh.
After a little bit of a scuffle where Gaetan got kind of scary and intimidating and was, you know, trying to fight the soldiers, and Isabel was able to pull him away from that, they kept walking through city after city, day after day. The crowds grew thinner and thinner as some refugees stopped in each city or died or turned around. But basically, Gaetan and Isabel just kept going, even as their kind of like herd grew smaller and smaller.
Yeah, as you would expect.
Mm-hmm. One day, the Germans strike again, an air raid over the countryside where they were walking. Bees. They buzzed around her head. She batted them away. She licked her dried lips and thought of pleasant days in the garden with bees buzzing about. No, not bees. She knew that sound. She stopped, frowning. Her thoughts were addled. What had she been trying to remember? The droning grew louder, filling the air, and then the airplanes appeared, 6 or 7 of them, looking like small crucifixes against the blue and cloudless sky. In the distance, a stone bridge exploded in a spray of fire and stone and smoke. The airplanes dropped lower over the crowd. Gaetan threw Isabel to the ground and covered her body with his. The world became pure sound. The roar of the airplane engines, the rat-a-tat-tat of machine gun fire, the beat of her heart, people screaming. Bullets ate up the grass in rows. People screamed and cried out. Isabel saw a woman fly into the air like a rag doll and hit the ground in a heap. Trees snapped in half and fell over. People yelled. Flames burst into existence. Smoke filled the air. And then, quiet. Gaetan rolled off her. "Are you all right?" he asked. She pushed the hair from her eyes and sat up. There were mangled bodies everywhere, and fires, and billowing black smoke. People were screaming, crying, dying. An old man moaned, "Help me." Isabel crawled to him on her hands and knees, realizing as she got close that the ground was marshy with his blood. A stomach wound gaped through his ripped shirt. Entrails bulged out of the torn flesh. "Maybe there's a doctor," was all she could think to say, and then she heard it again. The droning. "They're coming back." Gaetan pulled her to her feet. She almost slipped in the blood-soaked grass. Not far away, a bomb hit, exploding into fire. Isabel saw a toddler in soiled nappies standing by a dead woman, crying. She stumbled toward the toddler. Gaetan yanked her sideways. "I have to help. Your dying won't help that kid," he growled, pulling her so hard it hurt. She stumbled along beside him in a daze. They dodged discarded automobiles and bodies, most of which were ripped beyond repair, bleeding, bones sticking out through clothes. At the edge of town, Gaetan pulled Isabel into a small stone church. Others were already there, crouching in corners, hiding amid the pews, hugging their loved ones so close. Airplanes roared overhead, accompanied by the stuttering shriek of machine guns. It's frustrating because it's like, this is obviously going to be a heavy book because World War II is a heavy subject. It's just like there are these few moments of levity where, you know, we can talk about the other kinds of dangers that existed, like, you know, Isabel going off into the woods and finding a man in the fort. Like, that's a dangerous thing. And we can have some fun with some of those conversations. And then just very suddenly and unexpectedly, it turns into something very dark and heavy and scary. And
yeah, I'm sure that's exactly what it was like too. Like,
yeah.
You're just going and then all of a sudden just more death. And the whole reason you're moving.
Right.
You're fleeing.
It's the reality of what war is. There was no one that was safe. There was no place that was safe. It's just, you know, you can't really go on and pretend that this isn't happening when it is. It's literally right here at any moment.
In my mind, I'm like, the whole reason they're even there is to blow up that bridge specifically. And they just decided to shoot at all the civilians. But as a victim of that attack, it's like, it seems senseless. And
it seems like overkill to be like, oh, you wanted that bridge out of the way for whatever reason. Like, you didn't have to do all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you didn't have to shoot at all the people on the road.
Right. Eventually, Isabel and Gaetan held on to each other and depended on each other. They protected each other throughout their entire journey. So in not very much time at all, the two of them became incredibly close because they had to. They needed somebody to hold on to for survival. So as they walked, they held hands, but not really in that like lovey-dovey way that you do with like a partner. It's just, you know, as a way to make sure that they're still there and that it's real, that, you know, you still have some kind of foundation. So then we cut to Vienne, who is, again, Isabel's older sister. She's a school teacher in Caraveau, which so far seems pretty untouched by the war, other than the fact that Vienne's husband, Antoine, was pulled off to war. Vienne is relatively distracted because she's worried about the war and everything. Her husband's been gone for close to a year now. Her father had contacted her about the attack on Paris, and her sister was supposed to be staying with her, but it's been days since her dad said that he sent Isabel to go live with her, and she hasn't heard anything, and she hasn't seen any sign of her sister. Her students are also getting pretty nervous, saying things like, shouldn't we be learning German instead of French if Germany's about to take over?
Jeez.
Right? So when she arrives home that night, she makes dinner for herself and her daughter, Sophie, who's about 8. And then she goes into her garden. Her garden is basically her safe space, the place where she goes to feel calm and to relax and get away from the world. And she grows a lot of different things in her garden, not just flowers, but a lot of vegetables and food. And as she's gardening, she sees 3 women approach. One of them is elderly, the other 2 are younger, and one of the young women, is holding a baby. The old woman held out dirty, empty hands. "Can you spare some water?" she asked. But even as she asked her the question, she looked unconvinced, beaten. Vienne opened the gate. "Of course. Would you like to come in? Sit down, perhaps?" The old woman shook her head. "We are ahead of them. There's nothing left for those in the back." Vienne didn't know what the woman meant, but it didn't matter. She could see that the women were suffering from exhaustion and hunger. "Just a moment." Vienne went into the house and packed them some bread and raw carrots and a small bit of cheese, all that she had to spare. She filled a wine bottle with water and returned, offering them the provisions. "It's not much," she said. "It's more than we've had since Tours," the young woman said in the toneless voice. "They're here," the old woman said sharply. The young mother made a moaning sound and tightened her hold on the baby, who was so quiet and his tiny fist so blue that Vienne gasped. The baby was dead. Vienne knew about the kind of talon grief that wouldn't let go. She had fallen into that fathomless gray that warped the mind and made a mother keep holding on long after hope was gone. "Go inside," the old woman said to Vienne. "Lock your doors." The ragged trio backed away, and then she saw a mass of black shapes moving across the field and coming up the road. The smell preceded them. Human sweat and filth and body odor. As they neared, the miasma of black separated, peeled into forms. She saw people on the road and in the fields, walking, limping, coming toward her. They came forward, relentlessly moving closer, pushing one another aside, their voices rising. Vienne couldn't help so many. She rushed into her house and locked the door behind her. Inside, she went from room to room, locking doors and closing shutters. When she was finished, she stood in the living room, uncertain, heart pounding. Someone pounded on the front door. It went on, fists landing on the front door in hammer blows that made Vienne flinch. Sophie came running down the stairs and ran into Vienne's embrace. Vienne held her daughter close as the onslaught increased. Someone pounded on the side door. The copper pots and pans hanging in the kitchen clanged together, made a sound like church bells. She heard the high squealing of the outdoor pump. They were getting water. Vienne peeled her daughter away and forced her to sit down. Taking an iron poker from the side of the fireplace, she crept cautiously upstairs. From the safety of her bedroom, she peered out, careful to remain hidden. There were dozens of people in her yard, mostly women and children, moving like a pack of hungry wolves. Their voices melded into a single desperate growl. Vienne backed away. What if the doors didn't hold? Terrified, she went back downstairs, not breathing until she saw Sophie still safe on the divan. Vienne sat down beside her daughter and took her into her arms, letting Sophie curl up as if she were a much littler girl. She stroked her daughter's curly hair. A better mother, a stronger mother, would have had a story to tell right now. But Vienne was so afraid that her voice had gone completely. All she could think was an endless, beginningless prayer. "Please. Maman?" Sophie said, her voice almost lost in the pounding on the door. "What if Tante Isabel is out there?" Vienne stared down at Sophie's small, earnest face. God help her.
All right.
Yeah. So it's interesting because Vienne is the older sister and had to take care of Isabel when they were younger after their dad abandoned them. And then she went through a series of miscarriages, and so also is like dealing with the grief of all of that, which I can't even imagine. But she's definitely somebody that's ruled by fear. Every decision she makes is out of fear, which we've been finding out more and more as we've been going through this. But I also think that it's really interesting, that part right at the end where she, she's holding her daughter and her daughter's like, what if your sister, basically she's like, what if Isabel is out there? What if that's Isabel's one of the people pounding on the door right now?
Well, I'll get her tomorrow.
That's basically what Vienne says, which I think, unfortunately for Isabel, that's what's been happening her whole life, is that she has been out there pounding on the door her whole life, in a way, in a metaphorical way, and nobody has ever let her in. It's always been, I'll get her tomorrow. We'll deal with Isabel tomorrow kind of thing. So that's just sad.
Well, can you imagine the danger of letting one person in?
Oh, yeah. I see where, the thing is, I see both sides of this situation. I see the terror from Isabel's side of it. I also see the terror from Vienne's side of it.
Or just the random person going, oh, finally, maybe I can get help here. But there's only so much help that can happen.
So as it turns out, Isabel was one of the people that was out there pounding on the door. I've read this scene a couple times because I wanted to make sure. I had to include that part where she went out, where Vienne went up into her bedroom and looked out the window and saw that there were dozens of people in the yard, because the way that this scene is described, like the next scene is described, it's again kind of following Isabel's point of view, and it made it sound like there wasn't anybody that was in the yard with them. And so I had to make sure that it wasn't, because what I thought the first time that I read this was that like Vienne just heard pounding on the door and didn't know what was going on, and that it was actually Isabel. That's what I thought. But after having read it and was like, okay, there are dozens of people in the yard, then okay, fine. That's not, I can understand why she chose not to.
From Isabel's perspective, she may be the only one in the yard, but there's going to be a lot of people around.
Right.
They've been on the road for a long time, so there's like there's just people around. But from the other person's perspective, they're like, a group of people just came out of the horizon, and now there's pounding and people, and I was literally just warned by another group saying they're gonna take everything.
Isabel was one of the people that was out there. I don't know if it was at that exact moment, if it was later in the evening, but when she arrived, she did start pounding on the door. She tried to call out to Vienne, but she's been on the road for a week, hasn't really had food or water, it's been dusty, it's been crazy, and she lost her voice, so she literally like can't talk very well. Even if Vienne heard her, I don't know if Vienne would have let her in, but she couldn't talk to even get Vienne's attention, so she just sounded like another one of the refugees just pounding on her door. Her feet had become mangled with blisters. Her throat was so dry that she couldn't speak. She was covered in blood from the bombings, as well as she was very bruised and looked really beaten up. After receiving no answer from knocking on the doors, Isabel and Gaetan made their way to the backyard, to the pergola, where Isabel promptly collapsed because she's exhausted. They decided, Gaetan and Isabel, that this was just as good a place as any to sleep for the night. Gaetan led her around the house to the backyard. In the lush, jasmine-perfumed shadows of the arbor, she collapsed to her knees. She hardly noticed that he was gone, and then he was back with some tepid water, which she gulped from his cupped hands. It wasn't enough. Still, when he started to leave again, she reached out for him, mumbled a plea not to be left alone, and he sank down beside her, putting out his arm for her to rest her head upon. They lay side by side in the warm dirt, staring up through the black thicket of vines that looped around the timbers and cascaded to the ground. And yet, even here, in this quiet, it was impossible to forget what they'd just been through, and the changes that were close on their heels. She had seen a change in Gaetan, watched anger and impotent rage erase the compassion in his eyes and the smile from his lips. He had hardly spoken since the bombing, and when he did, his voice was clipped and curt. They both knew about war now, about what was coming. You could be safe here with your sister, he said. Isabel twisted around to look at him. Moonlight came through in lacy patterns, illuminating his eyes, his mouth, leaving his nose and chin in darkness. Have you ever heard of Edith Cavell? She asked. Do I strike you as an educated man? She thought about that for a moment and then said, yes. He was quiet long enough that she knew she'd surprised him. I know who she is. She saved the lives of hundreds of Allied airmen in the Great War. She is famous for saying that patriotism is not enough. And this is your hero, a woman executed by the enemy. A woman who made a difference, Isabel said, studying him. I am relying on you, a criminal and a communist, to help me make a difference. She paused, felt her expectation gather close. She had made a point of never trusting anyone, and yet she believed Gaetan. He looked at her as if she mattered. You will take me, as you promised. You know how such bargains are sealed? How? With a kiss. Quit teasing, this is serious. What's more serious than a kiss on the brink of war? He was smiling, but not quite. That banked anger was in his eyes again, and it frightened her, reminded her that she really didn't know him at all. I would kiss a man who was brave enough to take me into battle with him. I think you know nothing of kissing, he said with a sigh. Shows what you know. She rolled away from him and immediately missed his touch. Trying to be nonchalant, she rolled back to face him and felt his breath on her eyelashes. You may kiss me then, to seal our deal. He reached out slowly, put a hand around the back of her neck, and pulled her toward him. Are you sure? He asked, his lips almost touching hers. She didn't know if he was asking about going off to war or granting permission for a kiss, but right now, in this moment, it didn't matter. She whispered, leaning toward him. At his kiss, something opened up inside the scraped, empty interior of her heart, unfurled. For the first time, she realized that the landscape of a woman's soul could change as quickly as a world at war. I love you, she whispered. At her declaration, Gaetan's expression changed, hardened. The smile he gave her was so tight and false that she couldn't make any sense of it. Did I do something wrong? No, of course not, he said. We are lucky to have found each other, she said. We are not lucky, Isabel. Trust me on this. As he said it, he drew her in for another kiss. She gave herself over to the sensations of the kiss, let it become the whole of her universe, and knew finally how it felt to be enough for someone.
Interesting. Seems interesting. I'm not entirely surprised because they did go through a lot together.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find, what is this, Caro on the map?
Caravo?
Caravo.
Do you know how to spell it?
I found Tours.
Yeah, tour.
That is Caravo, Maine.
Oh my gosh. Here, let me pull it up for you.
Yeah.
Oh, Caravo is a fictional town in the Loire Valley, France. So it's a fictional place.
Oh. They used Tour as a real place. All right, whatever. Ugh.
Yeah, that is interesting. I didn't know that it was a fake place. I was wondering what you were doing on your map.
I was trying to see how far they were going.
Okay, well, how far is Tours from Paris?
Pretty far.
And she walked like at least half that distance, I would imagine. So I think that this scene is really good at showing how, I don't really want to say immature, but like naive Isabel is with, you know, obviously, yes, the two of them have been through a lot together. They've traveled a very long ways from, I don't know, pretty close to Tours to fictional Caravo.
Yeah.
And
do you know how long it's been? Is it weeks?
It's been like a week.
1 week?
1 week is, which I was very confused by because I was like, this seems like a very long journey to happen in a week. But Vienne kept saying that it had been days since her dad told her that Isabel was coming to stay with her. So to me, I'm like, that means that at most it's been a week. And because otherwise she would have said it was a week ago or it was 2 weeks. You know?
I'm trying to imagine how far they got. Because like in a car and they drove from Paris until one day.
Yeah.
How do you run it? Never mind. 1 day. So probably like 200, 300 miles from Paris.
Right.
And then you walk at like a mile in 15 minutes.
They traveled for a very long time, and on top of it, they survived a bombing and, you know, another air raid from the Germans. Like, they've gone through it.
They've gone through it a lot, but I'm like, but it's also only been a couple days. I was like, if it was a couple weeks.
And that was kind of my thought. I thought it came on very suddenly. Like, I thought that their banter was adorable, and I thought that it was really cute. Even going into the kiss part, I was like, that's kind of adorable. But then as soon as the kiss is over and she says, I love you, I'm like, whoa, hold on, pump the brakes.
Yeah, and he was like,
Again, yes, they've been through a lot. They've been traveling together for a long time. I mean, like, being with somebody nonstop for days is a long time. Getting to know them as well as surviving things obviously is going to trauma bond you guys together.
High emotional connection.
But at the same time, I don't know if Isabel really even knows what love is, you know, because she talks about that a little bit about how she doesn't know what love is, and her romance novels never really made sense until that kiss, which I'm like, adorable, but still.
You didn't have any of those flutters with any of the other people you've been kissing?
Apparently not.
All right.
The next morning, Isabel woke up to Vienne standing over her, and Gaetan was gone.
Interesting.
You don't seem very surprised.
I'm not.
A note had been pinned to her lapel that said, "You are not ready." Vienne brought Isabel inside and gave her a bath and some food. Isabel stuffed her face, manners be damned, and then she slept a very long time. When she awoke again, she found Vienne in the kitchen. "What is the news from Paris?" Isabel asked. "The swastika flag flies from the Eiffel Tower. And Papa?" "Fine," he says. "Worried about me, I'll bet," Isabel said bitterly. "He shouldn't have sent me away. But when has he ever done anything else?" A look passed between them. It was one of the few memories they shared. that abandonment, but clearly Vienne didn't want to remember it. Who is Gaetan? You spoke of him in your delirium. Isabel felt the world drop out from under her. It was a ridiculous, girlish reaction, overblown, and she knew it. It still hit her hard, wounded deep. He had wanted to take her with him until the kiss. Somehow he tasted the lack in her. He's no one, she said grimly. Just a boy with black hair and a sharp face who tells lies. He's nothing.
Yes. Let the bitterness run through you.
Absolutely.
She said she loved me. I can't handle that. I'm out of here.
I am curious what happened to Gaetan. If that is truly the case, if he felt like she wasn't ready and left, or if something else happened, because I am curious about the fact that he was in prison for some kind of thievery. But like, what does that even mean? Like, what? We don't really know what he did. And I'm wondering if he's going to come back, and if he does come back, how it's all going to play out.
If it does happen, it'll be a fated encounter in a bunch of chapters, or she immediately tries to go find him in like a chapter or two.
Well, it is not the second option because I've read about a chapter past this point, so.
Depending on where this story kind of flows, it may be a fated encounter somewhere else.
So then Isabel decides to change the subject because she doesn't want to talk about Gaetan anymore. And she tells Vienne that she wants to go off to the war to be an ambulance driver or a medic or a nurse. She doesn't want to sit idly by while the Nazis take over France. Vienne thinks that she's romanticizing the war and that it's ridiculous to think that one 19-year-old girl could make any sort of a difference in this war. The two of them never really got along, but here's just another example of them not getting along. They have a little bit of a spat over it, falling back into their old habits with each other, and Isabel turns on the radio to drown out her sisters arguing. She's like, I don't want to hear you, so I'm just going to turn on the radio. And of course, it's the news. And there's a man named Marechal Pétain. I don't know how to say his name. I'm really sorry. But he was a hero from the Great War, and he is telling the citizens of France that the government officials have decided to surrender to Germany.
Mm-hmm.
The old man's words droned on, saying things like trying days and control your anguish and, worst of all, destiny of the fatherland. Then he said the word Isabel never thought she'd hear in France. Surrender. Surrender. France to Hitler. It must be for the best, her sister said calmly. You've heard about Marechal Pétain. That is not how you say his name. I'm so sorry. He is a hero unparalleled. If he says that we must quit fighting, then we must. I'm sure he'll reason with Hitler. Vienne reached out. Isabel yanked away. The thought of Vienne's comforting touch made her feel sick. She limped around to face her sister. You don't reason with men like Hitler. So you know more than our heroes now? I know we shouldn't give up. Vienne made a tisking sound, a little scuff of disappointment. If Marechal Pétain thinks surrender is best for France, it is. Period. At least the war will be over and our men will come home. You are a fool. Fine, Vienne said. In the days following France's surrender, things remained tense between the sisters, who couldn't seem to see eye to eye on things. Vienne believes that the leaders of France know what they're doing and that they're thinking of the greater good, that this might feel like a loss right now, but in the end, it's going to save hundreds of lives. And Isabel, on the other hand, thinks it's ridiculous that anyone would just roll over for the Germans, especially in this kind of situation, especially because she'd lived through the German bombings, like two of them now. She was in Paris when Paris was taken over, and then she was in the countryside when she got bombed.
I mean, it was the right choice. Like, they're already in your capital. You've already lost.
Where Isabel is coming from is that she's like, the government lied to us. They knew that this was coming, kind of thing.
They didn't.
But, you know, I can see why she might think that. And I don't know. It's just that she feels like she's been lied to by the government, that she can't trust the government, and that them rolling over and she thinks that it's just letting it happen kind of thing versus.
Well, it is just letting it happen because, like, what else are you going to do? Either you fight in your biggest city that's already taken and lose all your citizens, or you just admit defeat and then occupying issues. So
yeah, it's I again can see both sides to this whole situation. I can see where Vienne's coming from, saying like, I think that our government knows what they're doing and they're trying to make what's the best out of a really horrible situation.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean, whatever. It's just like right now, this is what's best for France to, instead of killing all of our men, let's save the lives of as many people as we can and surrender, and then work out how to get out of it later kind of thing. Whereas Isabel sees it as giving up.
And you're gonna have both sides.
So, of course, almost immediately from the announcement of the surrender, food became scarce, communications became inefficient and even cut off in some places. And Isabel, of course, pointed to this as an "I told you so. I told you this isn't a great idea that we surrendered to Germany," but this really mostly just worked to annoy Vienne. Isabel became impossible to live with. All she could talk about was the monstrosity of the Nazis and their determination to kill the French. They had been standing in a food queue at the butcher's shop for 2 hours already. Isabel had been complaining nearly the whole time. Apparently, it made no sense to her that she should have to shop for food. "Vienne, look," Isabel said. Vienne turned, just to silence her sister, and saw them, Germans. Up and down the street, windows and doors slammed shut. People disappeared so quickly. Vienne found herself suddenly standing alone on the sidewalk with her sister and daughter. She grabbed Sophie and pulled her up against the butcher shop's closed door. Isabel stepped defiantly into the street.
Yeah, and you're gonna get your sister and your niece killed, you idiot. Or beaten.
"Isabel," Vienne hissed. But Isabel stood her ground, her green eyes bright with hatred, her pale, fine-boned, beautiful face marred by scratches and bruises. The green lorry in the lead came to a halt in front of Isabel. In the back, soldiers sat on benches facing one another, rifles laid casually across their laps. They looked young and clean-shaved and eager in their brand-new helmets, with medals glinting on their gray-green uniforms. Young, most of all. Not monsters, just boys, really. They craned their necks to see what had stopped traffic. At the sight of Isabel standing there, the soldiers started to smile and wave. Vienne grabbed Isabel's hand and yanked her out of the way. The military entourage rumbled past them, a string of vehicles and motorcycles and lorries covered in camouflage netting. "If I had a gun," Isabel said, "I'd show them not all of us wanted to surrender." "You'll get us all killed with that mouth of yours," Vienne said. "Let's go." "No, I want—" Vienne spun to face Isabel. "Enough. You will not draw attention to us. Is that understood?" Isabel gave one last hate-filled glance at the marching soldiers and then let Vienne lead her away. They slipped from the main street and entered a dark cleft in the walls that led to a back alley behind the milliner's shop. They could hear the soldiers singing. Then a shot rang out, and another. Someone screamed. Isabel stopped. "Don't you dare," Vienne said. I really love how this author builds up this tension in everything that's going on, and because it's very sudden that things start happening, and then it slows down for a bit. You're like, okay, nothing's happening, and that's the nature of war again. But it's just so they're standing in a food queue. I cannot say the word food queue. I keep wanting to say feud queue. But they're standing there for hours, and Isabel is just going on and on and on. And then just suddenly there's almost like a parade of the German military coming through. And it's just very sudden. And then it goes away for a little bit, and you almost forget about the fact that this is happening. And then suddenly, it pops up again. And so it's just, I really like that, how she does that, where it comes in these very sudden bursts of now suddenly we're in war.
Isabel is the younger one. She's just wanting to try to get her sister killed and her niece.
Apparently.
She's like, "No, you will not draw attention to us."
Again, it goes to show how much Isabel seems to romanticize war and how she wants to be a hero and a martyr. And I don't think that necessarily what she's doing is a bad thing. I get that it's dangerous.
It's not a bad thing in any manner, but
it is dangerous.
If you're gonna be doing that, just maybe don't stay at your sister's house.
Right. So they decided to go home after that, even though they'd been standing in line for 2 hours. They really didn't accomplish anything.
Shit's popping off in town.
Yes. So Isabel was, of course, pissed, as was Vienne, quite honestly, but the two of them were pissed off for different reasons. When they returned home, Isabel begins pacing, biting her nails, and essentially freaking out. And Vienne sends Sophie to her room so that she doesn't have to hear this conversation that she and Isabel are having, because again, Sophie's 8, Isabel's 19, 18, 19, and Vienne, I want to say, is in her late 20s. So it's a lot of, what I bet what it is. I think Sophie is 8, Isabel is 18, and Vienne is 28. I actually am pretty confident in those numbers because
interesting.
I think it's interesting to have a decade in between each
That could
of
be a
them.
literary choice.
I think that's something that's maybe happening here. Vienne sends Sophie to her room so that she doesn't hear the conversation, and she tries to tell Isabel to, first of all, calm down. And she also tries to say the war is over, to which Isabel essentially laughs in her face, saying, did you see them back there? They didn't look like they think that the war is over, not with the military being here.
It's over for France. There's lots of other people they're fighting.
That's true. And then Isabel says that they should just leave Caraveau, that they should run away and go literally anywhere else.
Where? To the new front?
To the new front, absolutely. And Vienne basically says to her, she's like, you shouldn't do anything stupid or crazy. I don't want you endangering me or my family. I don't want you endangering yourself, but like, stop this nonsense right now. Like, you are not going to be a hero. You're not going to do any of that kind of stuff, not while you're here anyways. So basically,
yeah, pretty much saying like, you can do that stupid shit, just not here.
Mm-hmm. Surrender. The word stuck in Isabel's thoughts. That night, as she lay in the downstairs guest bedroom, staring up at the ceiling, she felt frustration lodge in her so deeply she could hardly think straight. Hide the valuables. It was all that came to her. The Germans would loot the houses in town. Of that she had no doubt. And when they did, they would take everything of value. Not much of a plan, she muttered, but it was better than nothing. The next day, as soon as Vienne and Sophie left for school, Isabel began. She searched the house, opening closets and rummaging through drawers and looking under the beds. She took every item of value and set it out on the trestle table in the dining room. There were lots of valuable heirlooms. Isabel boxed up everything that would fit in a wood-trimmed leather trunk, which she dragged through the trampled grass, wincing every time it scraped over a stone or thudded into something. By the time she reached the barn, she was breathing hard and sweating. So the reason that I pointed out this particular passage, because you weren't here for the opening of this book opened up with an old woman moving into an assisted care facility, it sounded like, because she's dying, and she wanted this trunk from her attic. And so she goes up there and she finds it and is like looking through it, and she finds this picture with the name Juliette Gervais on it, which we have not met who Juliette Gervais is. So this was like in 1995 is how the book opened up. It's like 1995. She's going through this attic. She's an old woman dying of something. And her son becomes very controlling and is like, why are you up in the attic? You could have fallen. You could have died, whatever. And she's like, don't bitch to me about this, whatever. And she tells her son that she wants to take this trunk with her to the new assisted care facility. And he's like, why don't you just pick out what you want from it? She's like, no, the whole trunk is coming. And that's how the book opened up. And then we switched back to being in like 1939. So I've been trying to figure out who this old woman is. And I also want to know who Juliette Gervais is. I'm assuming that name will pop up. But I mean, I'm also on like chapter 8. So the fact that the name Juliette Gervais hasn't come up yet is kind of interesting. But I've been trying to figure out who the old woman is. I think last time I predicted that it was Isabel, because just the old lady seemed kind of sassy and Isabel's very sassy and I'm here for the sass. And then this scene where she's got a big trunk with lots of valuable heirlooms and photographs and things like that she's got in there that she drags into a secret spot. I'm like, ooh, is this proof that that's who the old lady is? Is Isabel the old lady? Or is this like trying to throw me off the scent and actually it's not the old lady? I don't really know. So that's kind of, I just find it suspicious.
I was just like, how's this going to backfire on her?
I don't know.
Yeah, she's like, I took all of your valuables and hid them while you were out.
So Isabel stores the trunk in a secret compartment of the barn's basement. That's basically, it's underneath this really sweet Oldsmobile that she has to drive forward a little bit so that you can see the door. And then she opens up the door and it's like a little area of storage that's down there. And she also stores some food, blankets, and just general supplies as basically a little bunker just in case kind of thing. And when Vienne comes home, she is disappointed to find that Isabel didn't go to the grocery store or the butcher shop or anything to get food like she told her to. She was like, Isabel, can you go do this today while we're at school? And Isabel was like, I can't stand being near the Nazis, so no, I'm going to do this instead. So of course, Vienne's disappointed when she comes home to find Isabel is hiding her grandmother's pearls and all of that stuff. But Isabel, of course, felt justified when she turned on the radio later that night. She's like, I think that I did the right thing by hiding all of this stuff. When she turned on the radio, she heard from another person, not that war hero, but some other guy, who basically said that the surrender wasn't final, that there were people in France who are still willing to fight.
Ah, yes, the rogue radio stations.
Basically. And that's about where I'm at.
So far, pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know how much I'm gonna enjoy the story because I don't really like the main character, but it feels like Vienna is also a main character. So
you seem to really like Vienne because she's the no nonsense. She's older.
She's like, I was at work with my child and I literally asked you to do one thing to help and you're not helping at all.
Yeah.
You're eating my food in my house, drawing attention to us, not going to get food at all. So it's just like, what's the point of you being here? I'm waiting for her to get like kicked out or something. Like, this can't continue.
I don't think it's going to continue for much longer.
I'm expecting either the husband is returning. I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but something bad happens to the other two. I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Yeah, but it is also a book about World War II, so...
Bad stuff happens all the time. I'm hoping it's not that. In my mind, what may happen is if the husband returns, Isabel does something to upset the local German garrison and they kill him.
Don't say that.
It's better than other bad things happening.
What I think might happen is I think Isabel might decide of her own volition to leave.
That'd be the best case scenario.
Which I don't understand why she stays, because she's under the belief that Vienne doesn't want her, that her dad doesn't want her, that nobody wants her. And I'm like, then why are you staying with them? Go off and fight the war if you want to.
Yeah, to be a burden.
She does seem very entitled, which is really interesting because in an earlier chapter, she was hanging out with this guy named Christoph, who was even more entitled than she was. And it was a very kind of like, in my opinion, it was a kind of humorous scene, which is necessary in these kinds of stories. But I think that Isabel is very much a person who just wants to do something, but I think she doesn't know what to do or how to do it. And so then a lot of her behavior comes off as being very entitled, which in some ways it is. But I also think Vienne is harshly judging her as well, being like, oh, she doesn't understand why she has to shop for food. And I think Isabel's more on the existential side of being like, why do we need to shop for food when, like, I don't know, we should be trying to do something to save ourselves and shit like that. So it's like, that's what I think is going on a little bit, is that there's this misunderstanding between the way that Vienne is seeing things and the way that Isabel is seeing things. I personally really like Isabel. I think she's hilarious, but I think that her sass is going to endanger somebody.
Yeah. Because Vienne's like, I want to survive. And Isabel's like, surviving isn't enough.
And I think they just have different definitions of what survival is. I think Vienne wants to keep her head down and is like, it'll pass. And Isabel's like, it won't pass unless we do something. Well, what did we learn today?
I learned, don't trust rogues. Thieves, communists.
Okay.
Don't trust them.
Mm-hmm.
And youth is stupidity. That's what I learned today.
Yeah. I learned that you're potentially a hypocrite if you're saying don't trust thieves and communists and whatever, and yet illegally do stuff with your video games.
I'm pirating, not thieving.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not. Thieving means I'm taking something away. Pirating means it still exists. I just have a copy.
You're thieving from the creator's pocketbooks.
Oh, yes. Here's the other. If there's a link to it on the internet, it's free.
Okay. Calm down. I also learned today that board games can come in 30-pound boxes.
Yeah, I don't even know what's in this thing. Let's see if it picks it up. I'm going to try to lift a corner of this box. I felt bad. I was nervous for my table for a second there.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Your table.
Our table.
I was going to say, excuse me.
The communist, our table.
If we're going to play the semantics game, it's my table. Thank you very much.
No, we signed a contract. It's our table.
Communist.
How fucking dare you?
Oh my gosh. Well, where can people find us?
You can find us on Instagram at
A Pot of Sass.
You can send us an email.
apotofsass@gmail.com.
And check out our Patreon.
Patreon.com/A Pot of Sass and Sarcasm. And please donate if you're feeling so inclined. We have a lot of fun things for you.
And you can find us anywhere you can listen to podcasts.
Absolutely. Well, we hope we keep listening. And personally, I still think that you should keep it as sassy as Isabel does.
Yes, sass it up.
Step out onto the road in front of the German caravan.
Yeah, the German caravan.
Stay sassy, nerds.
Later.
If you keep touching that, it's going to piss me off.
I'm going to touch it a lot.
It's really distracting, though. Vian made a tisking...
Yeah. Okay, fine, I'll mute it. Instead of just look at it.
Rude. They had been standing in a feud queue.
I think you're trying to say food queue.
That is hard to say.
No dying.
Why not?
That's for book characters.